Welcome to Old Rare Files. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe, become a member, and like our content.
A group of children in striped uniforms looks through a fence in a Nazi camp, symbolizing the suffering and lost childhood caused by the Holocaust. People confined inside a train wagon look outside through barbed wire during World War II. The scene shows the transport of prisoners under extremely restrictive conditions. Tanks advance during World War II, likely in Europe, as civilians gather nearby. The image captures the war's direct impact on urban life and civilians. Aerial view of the Revolutionary Reichstag and the devastated city of Berlin after the end of World War II, highlighting the Mashtab destruction left behind. A wide view of a coastal area filled with ships, trucks, and troops, highlighting the massive Allied logistical operation following the landing in Normandy during World War II. Men examine a giant mushroom, likely linked to nuclear testing during World War II. Its shape resembles the mushroom cloud, a symbol of atomic explosions of the time. Troops march in a long line across a snowy mountain range, highlighting the logistics and endurance required in high-altitude campaigns during World War II. A massive railway gun being transported, representing the advancement of heavy artillery during World War II. These weapons were designed to destroy fortifications from long distances. Soldiers and workers begin excavation for the construction of the Berlin Wall in 1961. The project marks stricter borders and restricted movement between both sides of the city. A man and a woman shake hands across barbed wire in Berlin in the early 1960s. Wire. The scene shows families divided by the Berlin Wall, built in 1961, which prevented direct contact between people on opposite sides of the city for decades. A young black student leaves school under watchful eyes during the era of desegregation in the United States, a defining moment of the civil rights movement. Men walk past a racist sign on a public road, highlighting everyday life shaped by segregation and inequality during apartheid in South Africa. A group of men in extreme poverty inside a deteriorated environment, possibly in Asia, in the early 20th century. The scene reflects hunger, exhaustion, and poor sanitary conditions. A woman rests inside a coffin during a time when funerals and wakes could take place in simple and improvised environments. The scene reflects the customs and limitations of the era. Soviet soldiers write messages on artillery shells before attacks during World War II. Many inscriptions were personal or patriotic. An American soldier during the Vietnam War wears a helmet reading "Make War, Not Love," reflecting the contrast between wartime reality and the era's peace movement. Workers operate at great heights during the construction of a major bridge over the river in St. Louis. The image highlights the extreme risks faced by laborers in large infrastructure projects. A woman poses during an early X-ray examination at a time when the dangers of radiation were not yet fully understood by medical science. Early physiotherapy and muscle strengthening machines show how treatments and exercises were performed in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, during a period of progress in medicine and physical rehabilitation. Wounded soldiers rest on stretchers outside a military hospital during World War I. The scene shows basic medical care and recovery after intense combat. A wounded soldier receives treatment while lying on a stretcher outdoors during World War I. The scene shows improvised medical methods and recovery routines outside traditional hospitals. A nighttime protest in the United States during the 1950s, 1960s, gathers a large crowd listening to a public speech. Signs reading "Hands Off Korea" indicate opposition to military intervention, reflecting the tense political climate of the Cold War era. Interior of the Reich Chancellery in Berlin, 1930s, showing the official office of Adolf Hitler. The grand and luxurious space was designed to convey power and authority, reflecting the monumental aesthetic of the Nazi regime. A skier glides across a lake as a massive volcanic ash cloud rises in the background, capturing a rare moment where leisure meets the power of nature. A rare image shows a man positioned on the side of an airship in flight near the engine during the early days of aviation. The scene highlights the risks and boldness of early air travel. A scene from Dr. No, 1962, marking one of the first iconic moments of the James Bond. The character emerging from the sea became one of cinema's most famous scenes. Harry Houdini prepares for one of his famous escape acts, bound in chains and restraints in the early 20th century. He became known for escaping seemingly impossible situations. Actor Lon Chaney displays his remarkable makeup kit, used to create unforgettable characters in silent films. Known as the Man of 1,000 Faces, he transformed his appearance without digital effects. Miniature set used in filmmaking to simulate large-scale battles before digital effects. Thousands of figures and models were carefully arranged to create realistic epic scenes. A group of soldiers performed synchronized movements and chants as part of haka-based training from the Maori tradition, used to strengthen collective spirit in the military forces of New Zealand. An aerial view of a U.S. aircraft carrier from the 1920s-1930s shows dozens of biplanes arranged on its deck. The ship represents an early stage of carrier aviation, when technology was still developing and aircraft had simple structures. A Curtiss seaplane flying over water in the early 20th century. These pioneering models helped expand the limits of aviation, being used in experiments and early aerial operations over aquatic environments. A diver using early underwater breathing equipment in the early 20th century. These early systems allowed longer underwater exploration and were essential for the development of modern diving and marine research. An early 20th century experimental compact vehicle designed for efficiency and aerodynamics, showcasing early innovation in personal transportation during the era of rapid technological progress in the Industrial Revolution. A nighttime scene shows a woman beside a car with glowing tires, symbolizing experimental automotive design and visual innovation in the United States during the mid-20th century. A woman calmly poses next to a lion at a zoo, showing how in the early 20th century there was less concern about safety when interacting with wild animals. An artist linked to the Dada movement poses in the 1920s, wearing unusual objects like a clock, wires, and accessories on his body. Dadaism emerged after World War I and rejected traditional art standards, embracing absurdity, chaos, and criticism of society at the time. Men pose in a studio using a visual illusion known as the decapitation trick, popular in the early 20th century. The technique used hidden supports and staged setups to create the appearance of a headless body, a common form of photographic entertainment at the time. Aerial view of Roswell Army Airfield in Roswell, 1940s. The area became globally known after the 1947 incident involving reports of an unidentified flying object. Pedestrians walk along a busy avenue while a large billboard asks, "Are you happy?" in Spanish. Likely set in Latin America in the 1970s, the scene reflects social questioning within everyday urban life. A busy street with open-air markets in New York in the early 20th century. The scene shows intense urban life, with vendors, carriages, and residents living in densely populated neighborhoods. Tourists and local guides pose with camels near the Sphinx and the pyramids of Giza, Egypt, in the early 20th century. The image shows the interaction between foreign visitors and local culture during a time when travel to the Middle East was becoming more accessible. An indigenous man posing with traditional clothing and symbolic adornments in the early 20th century. The details in the garments reflect the rich culture and customs passed down through generations in indigenous communities. Sailors of the Imperial Russian Navy pose aboard a ship, highlighting naval discipline and daily life in the early 20th century, with ropes and equipment neatly arranged in the background. A woman in China carries water buckets using a traditional shoulder pole, a common practice in rural life during the 19th and early 20th centuries. Children stand outside a modest home in a poor urban area, illustrating the daily life of working-class communities in early 20th century United Kingdom. A rural house built with earth and natural materials, photographed in the late 19th or early 20th century. Families lived in simple conditions, using local resources to create durable homes. The scene shows daily life in the countryside, with animals and basic tasks around the house. A couple camps beside a modified vintage car in the early 20th century. The scene shows how early travelers used their vehicles to explore new regions, creating a practical and accessible way to travel. Two women pose on a tennis court holding rackets around the 1930s, 1940s. The sport was becoming popular among women, reflecting social changes and greater female participation in sports. Two women sitting on motorcycles in front of a building, mid-20th century. The scene represents the popularization of motor vehicles and the growing presence of women in activities once dominated by men. Women take part in shooting training at a practice range around the 1940s, 1950s. During this period, especially in wartime, many women were trained for defense roles and military support. A group of women practicing archery in an open field in the early 20th century. The scene shows organized female sports activities during a time when women's participation in sports was expanding. Young people skiing in elegant outfits show how the sport was also a symbol of style in the early 20th century, especially in European winter destinations. A group of people sunbathe on a beach using portable reflectors to tan their faces. A curious leisure and beauty trend in mid-20th century United States. A woman poses on a pool diving board in the 1950s, reflecting pin-up style and leisure culture in the United States. Fashion and behavior highlighted post-war glamour. A model poses on a pier with fishing nets in the background in the 1960s. The image highlights women's fashion of the time, with light and modern clothing often featured in magazine and advertising photo shoots. A 1940s, 1950s beauty pageant shows finalists in swimwear on a decorated stage. The winner stands at the center holding flowers and wearing a dress, while the other contestants pose beside her. These events were popular after World War II and helped shape beauty standards of the time. Members of Pink Floyd pose in a park in London in the 1960s. The group would become one of the most influential bands in rock history, known for experimental compositions and concept albums. Portrait of Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Peter Tosh in 1978, capturing the meeting of British rock and Jamaican reggae, two genres that shaped generations. A musician relaxes while holding a guitar in an unusual way backstage, likely in the 1960s. The image captures a candid moment away from the stage. Paper mill in Nokia in the late 19th century. The company that began with paper production would later evolve into Nokia, which became one of the world's largest mobile phone manufacturers. Men demonstrate an electrical device with a radiator in the early 20th century. The image represents early uses of electricity in domestic and industrial systems, marking a major transformation in modern life. Japanese children gather around a robot during a demonstration, likely in the 1960s or 1970s. The scene highlights the growing interest in technology and innovation in Japan during its rapid post-war development. A monumental Mayan stela in the tropical forest, documented by explorers in the early 20th century. The carved details depict figures, symbols, and historical records of ancient Mayan culture. A baby posing inside a large sports trophy in the early 20th century. Photos like this were popular to symbolize family pride and celebrate achievements, even in a symbolic way. Workers operate rudimentary equipment while drilling an oil well in the late 19th century. The scene shows the early days of the oil industry and the harsh working conditions of the time. Athletes line up at the starting line in a packed stadium, capturing the early days of modern track and field competitions, likely connected to the first editions of the modern Olympic Games. A newlywed couple poses while cutting their wedding cake, representing traditional family celebrations typical of mid-20th century weddings in the United States. A human skeleton carefully arranged for scientific analysis, used in studies of archaeology and anthropology to understand age, cause of death, and lifestyles of ancient populations. Rationed food items during World War II, along with a ration book, show how governments controlled consumption to support the war effort.